Hello everyone, and welcome back to Cornell Cooperative Extension Sullivan County 4-H's Learn by Doing Beginner Watercolor series. And today, since we're not going over any new equipment, I thought we'd just go ahead and get started right away with the painting. So, just like last time, I have my ruler, and we're going to do a very basic sketch to start with. And today, what I want to focus on is reflections. So we're going to be working with water today, and we're going to start with still water. Moving water is very fun to paint, but sometimes takes a little bit more getting used to. And with reflections, you don't really see it too much with moving water. You mostly see blurs of color. So we're going to start our reflections with just kind of a lake. So I have a little mountain in the background, and then I have my horizon. So this will be the sky, this will be the water. And I'm just going to put a couple of things to break up some of the water. So right here, I'm going to put kind of like a little jet out. And we're going to have some trees on it. So I'll also show you today how to do pine trees. And then over here, we're going to have another little piece of island that just kind of comes out, comes back around. And this is, again, one of our grounding pieces. So this is where we're going to feel like we can sit. So that's pretty much it for our painting part of it. I have my water here, and like last time, we're going to start with, if I can get my brush in here, wetting the paper first to do kind of a nice soft background. And I want this to be maybe a little earlier in the day. So I'm going to stick with kind of like nice bright colors when I do this. Alright, so starting with my round brush. I'm going to do, remember we always do lightest to darkest first. So I'm going to do like some pinks and some oranges in here. Probably start with Alizarin Crimson, that's one of my favorites. Put a good amount of water on that, just to make it nice and light colored. I'm going to go right through the top of this mountain, and then go with just a tiny bit of cadmium yellow. Work that into the mix. And then I'm going to keep going with a little stronger colored Alizarin Crimson. And remember, when your paint's dry, they're going to dry a little lighter. So if you don't want the colors this soft, you just add a little bit more. Great. And now I'm going to show you how to do a slightly different cloud. And these are going to be pretty soft clouds. I'm going to mix up kind of like like a eggplant purple, using Prussian blue and some Alizarin Crimson. Make a nice maybe more like a plum color. And then I'm just going to take the rounded part of my brush and just very lightly touch the paper. And these are kind of more like free-form clouds, so they're not quite as calculated as the clouds that we went over last time. So these guys, you just kind of let them do what they want to. You'll notice that the bottoms aren't, you know, super flat or anything like that. The only thing we want to avoid is we don't want them to look like perfect little cotton candy fluffy clouds. So we just try to make sure that we avoid that. And when I do clouds like this, I also like to usually give them a little bit of a up kick to them, like they're kind of going upwards, and then like a little guy right there. And those are just very soft, kind of wispy clouds. So those are done wet. I am just going to try to give a little more definition to this bottom, but that's more personal preference than anything. Alright, so there you go, some nice little soft clouds. And then we're going to do the mountain, and the mountain is also going to be soft, so we're going to do this wet. We want most everything in the background to be pretty light. Alright, so now we're going to make our mountain a slightly darker color, but we're going to stay in the same family as the clouds that we just did. I'm just going to add some more blue to it. So this paper already started to dry, and that happens sometimes when you're working on stuff. So I'm just going to add a little more water to my paints just to make sure that they stay kind of loose. Darken that color a little bit more. It's maybe a tiny bit close to the color of my clouds. So we are done with the kind of soft background portion of our painting. So I'm gonna hit this with a hairdryer and probably change my water because it's already pretty dark. And then we're going to do a little bit more detail right at the base of the mountain, and then we'll start on our reflections. Okay, so just to give a little detail, I'm going to take an even slightly darker color and we're just gonna do, check it. Yeah, we're just gonna do some little kind of like faraway trees. Try to make this as sporadic as you can so that they don't look like they're in a perfect little cluster. You don't want to show any kind of pattern. So that just kind of anchors that middle ground. And now we're going to move on to the reflection. So we're going to do that wet as well. When you do reflections, it's when there's an object, like these rocks, or this little island here, and it's still water, the reflection is right underneath whatever the object is. But when you're doing like sky reflection, then it is opposite. So since this is pink up here, it's going to be pink down here. Since there's yellow over here, it's going to be yellow right closest to the mountain. So that's what we're going to start with. And I like to go from the top to the bottom. So I'm going to start with my yellow that I used. Remember, lightest to darkest. So even though you don't see this much yellow in the sky, we are also going to copy the mountain. So we're just going to lay it down like it is in the sky. Make sure you get the color right up to the horizon. Typically, the color in the water is a little bit softer than the color of the thing it's reflecting to. crimson. Also going to do a little bit of a suggestion of the clouds that are in the sky. We're not going to try to copy their shape or anything because this is going to be really soft reflections, but we're just going to kind of repeat the color a little bit. Now we're going to do the very light reflection of the mountain, and then we're going to do some of the reflection of the trees. So the mountain color is going to be lighter. And we're going to kind of follow the shape of the mountain, but we're going to mostly drag the brush down. Like that, and then for the trees that we did, we're gonna again do a slightly darker color than the mountain color that we used, but it's still not gonna be quite as dark as the very same color. Alright, now we got to, before our paper dries, just do a little bit of reflection for our rocks, a little bit of a reflection for our little island here. Alright, now the last thing we're going to do before we dry this that we can continue is we are going to take a square brush that's nice and thin. We're going to do a little technique that kind of makes sure that it still looks like flat water. So I just wet the brush a little bit, sucked it with a paper towel just a touch, straight up and down. I'm going to lightly touch it to the paper and drag it across. See that I took some color out. I'm just going to randomly do this throughout the painting. This brush is a tiny bit more thick than I would like to use. You want to make sure that these are super, super straight. And you suck them out because it's flat water. Okay, so now we can dry and move on to our next steps. Going to mix up another kind of like dark blue, purpley plum color with Prussian blue and ultramarine blue. Okay, so clearly the camera cut out while I was working on this, and I hadn't noticed. So what I had done, and I'll go over the new technique too with the pine tree, is I just added the rock just like what we did last week, and I scratched out a little bit. I very simply painted the island, and then I did the pine trees, which I'll show you, and then I was just starting to outline the little landing over here. So what I wanted to show you with the pine trees was how you do that, and we'll just use the back of the paper, is you take a nice square brush, you go straight up and down, like so. So make yourself kind of the stalk, and then you take the heel of the brush and you just dance it along the stalk that you just made, just like that. And the key is that you vary the sizes and you reset the shape of your brush every time. So again, there's a little stalk, and then I'm going to use the heel of my square brush. Start out with small strokes at the very top of the tree, and then I'm going to increase them in size and thickness as I go down, like that. And you can see the shape of the brush is now kind of like squished because I used it. So we just go and reset it just on the palette, getting more paint, and now it has a good shape again. And when you do a big one, usually the branches get really thick towards the bottom like this, so you kind of make that reach out a little bit more, like so. Now you're not trying to make them perfect Christmas trees every time. You can try to have some really big or really thin. You can even have one that's a little bit, see, I didn't reshape my brush. You can have one that's a little bit fallen over too, like what we see in nature. You just kind of hippie. So yeah, that's how I did the pine trees. And that is all you missed. So just the rocks, scrape them out, island, added the pine trees, and started to do the little foreground here. So this kind of looks a little funny right now, so what I'm going to do is add some grass, because it just looks like on the edge of a lake it needs some grass. And we're going to do the same technique that we did last week, using the nice thin brush, just kind of coming in with some of this. Remember not to take it in all the same directions, and this is like on the edge of a lake, so it's not going to be super kempt. Okay, so just a little, just to kind of break up the straightness. And you can also, if you want to, you can kind of like add little rocks here, just like very small ones, like that, on the island too, or the shore, I guess you could call it. Alright, now we just have to do these rocks here. And because these rocks are kind of smaller, I'm probably not going to scrape those out like what we've been doing, but I think instead I'll add a little grass to them too. So, sorry about that technical difficulty, guys. But today, what we went over is reflection and kind of the different colors you use in sunrise. They're very light and bright in color. How to do a pine tree, and how to do little different 3D effects with having a very flat looking lake, and also sucking out a little bit of color to really get that nice flat reflection that you get on a very calm lake. So I'll give you a close-up on this. Okay, so there is the finished piece. Make sure if you're looking for more watercolor tutorials or information about Sullivan County 4-H, make sure that you check out Cornell Cooperative Extension Sullivan County Facebook page, Instagram, and YouTube. For more information about Sullivan County 4-H and how to sign up, make sure you follow the link in the description below. If you're interested in showing any of your artwork in the Sullivan County Youth Fair that's coming up very quickly, be sure to contact the 4-H staff and we will help you on how you can do that. So I hope that you enjoyed this and have fun with your new techniques that you're going to try out. And as always, happy painting.